Harriet Hageman, do you think Liz Cheney should be president, let alone a congressman from the state of Wyoming? You decided to challenge her in the Republican primary there.
Absolutely not, Mark. I think you ask a very valid question, which is she isn't fit to represent Wyoming in Congress right now. And the idea of someone who has these kind of dictatorial and tyrannical, I guess you'd say, proclivities, doesn't bode well for our republic. And she hides behind the Constitution and acts like she's doing it all for the Constitution. Doesn't explain what she means in that regard. But we don't want someone who's willing to abuse their power to destroy someone that they view as a political enemy. Yet that's exactly what she's doing, and it's what she has publicly stated she's doing. She's made very clear that the purpose of this committee is to make it so that Donald Trump never gets near the Oval Office again. But, I don't know that anybody died and made her king. And the fact is that it's not for her to decide or make that kind of a decision, or to use this kind of a committee to further that agenda. Clearly, this is an abuse of power. They've admitted what their agenda is, and it doesn't have anything to do with truth-finding. It has to do with destroying somebody and his supporters.
Mm-hmm. This is the sort of thing that the old Soviet Union did. This is the sort of thing Stalin used to go after his political opponents, even if they were out of office at the time, didn't want any competition. Liz Cheney has decided that she didn't like Donald Trump's foreign policy. She didn't like the way he spoke about NATO, and yet he was right. And he caused NATO to spend more money than otherwise it would. She didn't like the way he talked about the Middle East, but as a result of his policies, peace broke out in the Middle East, and Israel never had a friendlier president than Donald Trump. We can go from one country to the next to the next. Liz Cheney's been wrong about a lot, and yet she appears on these media sites and in these media newspapers that used to trash her father. She's praised by groups that went after Halliburton. She's really turned out to be the Rasputin of politics, hasn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's an interesting description of her, because that's exactly what we're dealing with. Is she did not like Donald Trump's foreign policy, and one of the things that so many people will point out is they'll try to, in her defense, say, well, she voted with President Trump 93% of the time. I disagree that she has that conservative of a voting record, but I think what you need to look at is the things that she broke from him on, and I think those are some of the most important issues we're dealing with. And I also think that there's some of the most important issues that really expose who and what she is, and that is someone who is a globalist. She's a globalist. She wants to be meddling in other countries' affairs. She thinks that the United States should be involved in all kinds of things throughout the world. And as you pointed out, Donald Trump made the NATO countries come closer to paying their fair share. She disagreed with him. What I can't figure out is why in the world anybody from the United States would not support President Trump in that endeavor. And look what he did. Look what he was able to do. Germany did increase the amount that they paid into NATO. Now they've got a terrible mess on their hands because the current administration's energy policy is such a disaster. But the reality is Donald Trump warned them. He sat across the table from them as they smirked, and he told them, if you don't wean yourself from Russian energy, you're going to find yourselves in a terrible position. People like Liz Cheney and the Germans just kind of laughed and nodded and tried to pat him on the head and that sort of thing, and then pursue their own policies. But he was absolutely right, and that's what has happened on so many things. She broke from him when he tried to pull out of Syria. Every time that he attempted to disentangle the United States from some kind of a foreign intervention, she fought hard against him. She does not believe in the America First agenda. She made it clear during his administration she didn't believe in the America First agenda. Again, I'll say it. She's a globalist. She believes in intermeddling with other countries. She believes in regime change. She is her father's daughter in that regard, and it hasn't made our country safer. What it has done is it has created, again, the disaster that we're seeing with the current administration and even the election of the current administration. So I disagree with Liz Cheney on a lot of things. Those are just some of them.
Now, it's also the job of a congressman to serve the best interests of their constituents. That's a full-time job. And yet I'm being told her full-time job is serving with her left-wing Democrat kook friends undermining people's due process rights, issuing subpoenas to embarrass people. They're all leaking stuff about individuals that they're not supposed to be, trying to get criminal charges brought against former Trump officials, if not President Trump himself. I mean, that's not really serving the interests of the people in Wyoming, is it?
No, and she has admitted that the vast majority of her time is spent on the January 6th Commission. And you named the names before. Adam Schiff. She has aligned herself with Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin, two of the absolute worst swamp creatures in the world. How you could ever align yourself with Adam Schiff against the people of Wyoming or the voters of Wyoming is just beyond us. And that's absolutely what she has done. She's admitted doing it. We see her in the pictures. She's working on that committee. And that's exactly right. They leak what they want the public to hear. That's why this entire commission is so incredibly dangerous, because it's a star chamber situation. They're acting as the investigators, they're acting as the prosecutors, they're going to act as the judge, and then they're going to act as the jury. We didn't send her to Washington, D.C. to act as the judge and jury of Donald Trump or his supporters. We sent her there to address our issues such as public land use and the war on coal and the war on energy and trying to secure our border and energy independence. We sent her there for the purpose of addressing the issues that are important to Wyoming, and that's not what she's focusing on. She's using our congressional seat to further her own political agenda that the people of Wyoming not only disagree with, but she's doing it at the expense of all of the other issues that are so important to us that I just summarized, and there are many more beyond that. She's not working for Wyoming. She's working for herself and the left-wing Democrats. The other thing is they're covering up and trying to deflect attention from the absolute abject failure of this administration. And what we know we're going to see is that this commission, starting in July, August, September, October, they're going to start throwing a lot more information out there in order to try to attack Republicans and try to find some desperate way of holding on to the House. And Liz Cheney is right in the middle of that. She is a useful tool for the left wing, for the politicians and the left wing media to attack Republicans, and she's going to continue to be used for the next 6 months to try to prevent us from retaking the House.
She's really a disgruntled former Republican leader. The rank and file in the House have rejected her. The Republicans in America have rejected her. She's now a favorite of the media. We've seen this song before. She almost strikes me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but she strikes me as obsessed and almost unstable about this. Now, I'd like to bring you back after the break here, Harriet Hageman. If you'll hold on, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, and you can go to HagemanForWyoming.com. That's HAGEMAN for Wyoming.com. She could sure use your support. All the big boys and big girls in Washington are helping Cheney.
Mark Levin, the Great One.
The Great One, Mark Levin.
Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
Harriet Hageman is the Republican primary opponent to Liz Cheney in Wyoming. Harriet, when is the election there?
The primary is August 16th, and that will really decide the election here because I don't anticipate the Democrats will be fielding anyone, and if they do, they'll be a pretty weak candidate. The Democrats have made clear that they're going to come out and crossover vote, and they're going to vote for Liz Cheney. So that gives you an idea of who her base is anymore. If people want to learn more about me, they can go to HagemanForWyoming.com. There's a lot of information about my history and background and what we're doing and policies and all of that, and I'd sure welcome any help people are willing to give. But that's August 16th is the primary. That's going to be who decides who is Wyoming's next congresswoman.
So Democrats can vote in the Republican primary there?
Yes, they can. They're allowed to cross over. They can actually walk in the day of the election, cross over, become a Republican for a short period of time, and walk out. There's been an effort to stop that for quite a few years now. It failed in this last legislative session yet again. I'm sure that Liz Cheney was behind that. But the fact is that they can. But I'm very confident that I can beat Liz Cheney in a head-to-head competition in the state of Wyoming. So, but that's just one of the things people need to understand, that we have that kind of an idiosyncrasy in Wyoming's elections.
And, of course, she can't win without a lot of Democrat votes, can she?
No, I don't believe that she can. I think that her polling is so far down that she can't. So she's going to be dependent. I know that there's going to be a concerted effort for the Democrats to come out and support her, not because they necessarily support her policies, but they recognize how useful she is right now to the Democrats, again, in deflecting attention, as well as attempting to, as she says, do everything in her power to make sure that President Trump never gets anywhere near the Oval Office again. And as you've pointed out a couple of times, her efforts to destroy any supporters that he has. So that's what her goal is right now. The Democrats like that. They're going to support her as long as that's the agenda that she has. And so they will come out and support her in August. But again, I'm confident we can beat her.
You know, that's a real abuse of power, to use taxpayer funds and to use the one seat that Wyoming has to obsessively go after a political opponent, and then to try and criminalize politics, which, of course, Congress is not supposed to be doing, and to really abuse constitutional due processes and the subpoena power.
Yes.
She really has abused her office and has abused power in the name of course, the law and the Constitution. I would ask you this.
Yes.
If she's not going to speak up for the people of Wyoming in the House, who in the world is? Nobody.
Well, that's why we need to replace her, because we only have one congressional seat. We're the largest district in the United States, because Wyoming is almost 99,000 square miles, and right now we don't have anyone to represent us for a couple of reasons. One, instead of being on the Natural Resource Committee, she's on Armed Services and the January 6th Commission. That tells you her priorities. They're not Wyoming priorities. They are priorities of the elite in Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C. And then the other fact is that she has burned so many bridges in Washington, D.C. that her fellow congressmen and women don't work with her, and they can't work with her. We're going to be having we've received an enormous amount of support from the sitting members, Leader McCarthy, Elise Stefanik, Rand Paul. We're going to be releasing names of other folks who are endorsing us, and really it's a vote of no confidence against Liz Cheney for the first time in history. That's what's happening, is that there's a lot of congressional representatives, Republicans, on the full spectrum, both moderate or more liberal Republicans as well as conservative Republicans, are coming out against Liz Cheney because they can't work with her and she will not further the Republican or conservative agenda. So right now, Wyoming really doesn't have any representation in Wyoming. She's using our seat to further her agenda. It's not our agenda. We are entitled to representation, and the fact is she doesn't live in Wyoming. She hasn't lived in Wyoming for a long, long time. In fact, since she was a little girl. She bought a house there in 2012, but other than that, she lives in Northern Virginia with her husband and children. Her husband is an attorney with one of the big law firms in D.C., a law firm that's actually done work for the Chinese Communist Party. So on the one hand, while she comes out and decries China, at the same time, her own family, she's making money directly off the Chinese Communist Party, Kazakhstan, and other countries like that. So, it's really the swamp. I hate to use that terminology, but the fact is sometimes it applies, and I'm not trying to be trite when I say that. These really are the power couples. It's the Jamie Raskins and his wife, who they just had to pull in terms of her of her nomination to the Federal Reserve because she was so horrific. Well, that's Liz Cheney's best friend. Jamie Raskin is Liz Cheney's best friend. That's who she's hanging out with. That's who who is helping her to set policy. And what's so interesting is that Jamie Raskin and his wife are absolutely as opposed as anybody in this country to our fossil fuel industries in the state of Wyoming. His wife has come out and said that we should be able to block getting capital to oil and gas companies, coal companies that produce energy. She wants to stop banks being able to loan them money. That is who Liz Cheney is hanging out with, the people who want to destroy the most important industries in my state.
It is truly unbelievable. And, of course, his father, and this is not a conspiracy, had ties to the old Soviet Union, the Institute for Policy Studies. And I'm sure the Raskins hated Liz Cheney's father's guts and George Bush and all the rest. It is amazing how these things turn the way they have. But Liz Cheney strikes me as somebody who is very focused on Liz Cheney, very focused on the attention she gets. She also strikes me as somebody who does not believe in fairness. What I'm hearing from people is that when they go into these depositions and so forth, she's often present, and she's very rude and nasty to each and every one of them. We have hundreds of people who are serving in jail for nothing more than parading on public property and trespassing on public property. I'm not talking about violent people. I'm talking about other people who got caught up in this. And this committee, this commission, doesn't give a damn about any one of them. Moreover, notice they don't ask for texts or emails from Nancy Pelosi or anything, who was supposed to protect that building, was offered National Guardsmen from the President of the United States. This committee's not interested in any of that. So in addition of her friendship with Raskin and Schiff and so forth, she is the Republican face. She is the useful idiot, my phrase, for Nancy Pelosi. Your final thoughts?
Well, absolutely. And the fact is that there's equal protection under the laws, and there's also due process. And what you can see, and again, it's the abuse of power of this commission, they are hell-bent on destroying people, not finding out what happened, on destroying people. Who is Ray Epps? Who were the provocateurs? I agree with you. We don't support anybody who did anything violent or destroyed property, but there is a lot of facts that are going to go unaddressed, that are going to be unexposed, that are going to be swept under the rug because they have one narrative and they have one purpose. And the narrative is that Donald Trump did it, and the purpose is to destroy him and his supporters. This isn't about finding out what happened. This is a star chamber, abuse of process, abuse of power type situation where you have a group of people who are using the full weight of the federal government to destroy people.
I'd like to give you my strongest support, Harriet Hageman. I think you would be an excellent member in the House for Wyoming and for the country. I think Liz Cheney is right now an absolute poisonous disaster, and I wish you all the best in this primary. I want to encourage my my Levinites out there to go to HagemanForWyoming.com, Hageman for Wyoming.com, and give whatever they can. And thank you. And we're going to definitely have you back. That's a long way off in August.
Mark, I can't wait. It's so wonderful to visit with you. The knowledge and the experience and the history that you have, your understanding of the Constitution, I really have so much respect for you, and I'm excited to be able to come back and continue to talk about these important issues. Thank you for caring about Wyoming. Thank you for caring about my state. Thank you for what you've been doing for my country.
Well, God bless you. And thank you, ma'am, for taking on Cheney and hopefully winning this seat. You take care of yourself.
Thank you. You as well.